Right. And the men of the church ought to be masculine, though within the context of Christianity. The
Yeah.
church itself ought to be feminine because
Amen.
she is a woman. So, which is why I thought that an interesting question, because the lament, not to derail the point of the conversation, but we lament that the church is not that the church is being feminized. Now, in one respect, I agree with that, and I understand what the complaint is. It's that the men who ought to be men are being feminized, which is a sin. We are to be what God made us, and God made men to be men and women to be women. But the church as an organization is a woman. She
Yep.
ought to be uh, she ought to be meek and conservative, if you will,
Yep.
chaste. She ought to be submissive unto her head, resting in him to protect and defend her. She ought never pick up the sword, the gun, the weapon. She ought never be the rebellion, the soldier, the revolutionary, because she
Amen.
is to be a good Christian woman. And the men of the church ought to be real men and ensure that she remained chaste in a very lewd world. And one of those things, which is failing currently, and this is seen especially among the bearded, no neck, masculinity solves all the problems men in the church, is they should be real men and protect the honor of the church, but instead they're being strange Spartans, and they're trying to give the church a weapon to go wage a war. And that's not what she's supposed to be doing. So they're trying to masculinize the church as an organization, as an institution, in the name of, I don't know, masculinity solves all the problems. And it's because they've correctly identified, this goes back to our comment, they've correctly identified the problems of feminization, but they're, instead of responding with Christ as the solution, they're responding with masculinity as the solution. I'd say that it takes a real man to submit to persecution rather than to rage against it. Hebrews 12 verses 1 and 2. I mean, verse 2 is the object of our faith in persecution is Christ, who endured all suffering because of that joy which was set before him. That is how Christian men are to live, to endure with patience persecution and suffering and misery and death, both physically and spiritually. Christ prayed that God would forgive those who were actively murdering him. That is how Christian men are to behave. And you don't see that. That is misinterpreted as weakness. They they think grace and mercy are weak, and they make the church an ungracious, merciless soldier.